very rough couple of weeks. I really do appreciate everybody who is tuning in and has stuck it through all of the shit. Today, we are going to be working and discussing a couple really bad stories. Unfortunately, there's no other way to describe them. It's the oops all bad edition of news today. It's oops all terrible stories. Unfortunately, there are no good ones. There is no balancing act. It is oops. Starting with this article by C. Mandler from CBS News. A Texas bill would ban nearly all gender-affirming care, including for trans adults. A bill introduced in the Texas Senate is triggering alarm among queer advocates in the state, who say it would make nearly all gender-affirming health care illegal, including both surgical and non-surgical treatments, even for trans adults. While we've been seeing bills that would criminalize life-saving health care for trans people, none go as far as this, Rachel Hill, the government affairs director at the advocacy organization Equality Texas, told CBS News. This bill bans any public funding for trans health care at any age and puts impossible constraints on medical professionals and insurance providers, Hill added. The bill, State Bill 1029, which was introduced on February 17th by Republican State Senator Bob Hall, would ban public funding for gender modification procedures and gender modifications and treatments, bar sub-health plans from providing coverage for a gender modification or procedure, and increase legal liability through malpractice suits for medical professionals or healthcare providers that offer gender-affirming care. Now, there's a lot to fucking unpack here. The fact that they want to kick anybody who is on public health care off, they always have been reducing anything related to public health care. That's not that new. The barring health plans from providing it at all, that's insidious. Even if you wanted to provide comprehensive gender-affirming care, you would be legally barred from doing so. But this is the part that it might not seem as bad on a surface level. This is going to shut down every form of access in Texas. Because all you need is one bad faith asshole coming in and claiming I was not prepared properly for this thing that I swore up and down I was prepared for properly, and now you owe me hundreds of thousands of dollars for permanently modifying my body in a way that I don't approve of. Lawsuits in this country are not a question of who is right and who is wrong. It's a question of who has the better lawyers. And when you make something a malpractice liability question, there are piles of the skeeviest, schemiest, dirtiest, trick-playing assholes who are going to look at something like this and go, oh, that's an in. The same kind of people who aren't eager to sue hospitals in order to help people. They sue hospitals because they know hospitals just want to settle. And they just want easy money. That's going to very quickly shut down pretty much any form of access we could generate. The bill lists as gender-affirming procedures any surgeries performed on a patient's genitals, mastectomies, and prescriptions of puberty blockers or hormones, quote, for the purpose of transitioning a patient's biological sex or affirming the patient's prescription of the patient's sex. CBS News made multiple attempts to contact Hall's office, but has yet to hear back. Affirming the patient's prescription of the patient's sex. That's not just banning HRT. That's banning, like, guys who get testosterone therapy because they're old and need testosterone. That's affirming the patient's prescription of their sex. Like, that. Uh, Hopefully, this won't get through. Jesus fucking Christ. This bill would have a chilling effect, halting all best practice medical care for all trans people in the state, regardless of age. Christopher Hamilton, CEO of Trans Health Action, a nonprofit that works to provide health services to the queer community, told CBS News. If this bill passes, insurers will no longer cover gender affirming care, malpractice insurers will not provide malpractice insurance to providers, and physicians will not assume a personal financial lifetime liability for providing gender affirming care, affecting nearly 100,000 trans people in the state. Texas has introduced over 70 anti-queer bills in the 2023 legislative season so far, according to Equality Texas. While legal challenges have prevented most bills from becoming law, critics say the legislative efforts marginalize and stigmatize trans people. I've been intentionally trying to keep my consumption of anti-trans legislation to a minimum, but I just read that Texas State Bill 1029. I'm starting to feel like it was a bad idea given the fact that I can't stop shaking and my heart won't stop racing. Yeah. State Bill 1029 will likely face some legal challenges, and some advocates acknowledge that it might not pass, but its introduction is seen as indicative of a larger agenda to politicize trans issues and access to health care. If someone who is trans needs a mastectomy for cancer, they may have to prove that it is for cancer care rather than what the bill calls gender modification, says Hamilton. If a trans person with a uterus needs a hysterectomy for cancer prevention, will this person be denied because of the doctor's fear? The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, have spoken out against what the AMA calls government intrusion into the practice of medicine that is detrimental to the health of transgender and gender-diverse children and adults. Yeah, it absolutely is. I don't understand how there's even an argument here that they're doing anything that's not that. Like, the argument against trans youth, it makes no sense if you understand how any of this works. It is 0% a logical or sensible direction. But at bare minimum, think of the children is such a common cliche, easy to understand grab that it's kind of hard to argue you can't understand why they push that. Because at bare minimum, some of the shit that they pretend like is what's going on there, it seems heinous on its surface. It's not true, but it easily frames things in a worse light. Whereas, this is not an attack on trans kids anymore. Because it never was about kids. The idea of attacking kids was always a method of getting in. And this is not that. This is straight up just an attack on trans people existing. Abbott, the shithead, wrote a letter that was talking about how bad a lot of these treatments are. No, and also go fuck yourself. I'm not going to read the words. I'm not going to repeat his bullshit. This bill is extremely alarming as it resembles what Texas did with reproductive rights, removing any way for people to get safe, best practice medical care without having an outright ban, Hamilton said. Texas's Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, recently announced his legislative priorities for 2023, including bills to restrict trans student athlete participation in collegiate sports and end gender transition treatment for young people. Patrick said he believes Texans support his proposals because they, quote, largely reflect the policies supported by the conservative majority of Texans. I mean, it's interesting that even there he's noting it's not the opinion held by the majority. It's the opinion held by a part of the majority. Experts say that access to gender-affirming care can be a life or death issue for trans people. A study published in the Journal of Pediatrics found that nearly 51% of female-to-male respondents had attempted suicide, far higher than the average youth suicide rate, according to a 2022 study by UCLA. Access to medical care, participation in sports, and other issues affect trans youth and adults have become the focus of intense political debate in the U.S. in recent years. Predominantly Republican lawmakers in more than 24 states, attempting to enact measures that would either heavily restrict or completely ban access to gender affirming care and other resources. Like, this isn't a two-sided war. I think that's the important thing that a lot of people miss. Democrats don't really give that much of a fuck about this. It's just the GOP keeps lining up to try and punch trans people in the fucking gut. And, like, that means de facto we occasionally have Democrats fighting for us. That is straight up an attempt to create populations that you can reasonably other. This article is from Queer Nation, and it's about recent bills that have passed in Tennessee. Tennessee legislature gives trans youth 1 year to detransition. The state will also ban drag performances in places where minors may be present. Which, that word may is carrying a lot of fucking weight there. The Tennessee House of Representatives passed 2 bills today attacking queer rights, including a bill banning gender-affirming care for trans minors and requiring trans youth to detransition by March 2024. The other bill bans for drag performances in any place where minors might be present. The healthcare ban now goes to Governor Bill Lee, who has supported anti-queer legislation in the past. He has signaled that he is supportive of this bill as well. The ACLU has already said that it will sue if the healthcare ban becomes law. The drag bill needs to go before the state Senate for a procedural vote. It already passed the state Senate in a 26-2 vote before it too will go to the governor's desk. Both bills will become law even if the governor doesn't sign them. House Bill 1, the first bill filed this year because Republicans wanted voters to know that this is their top priority, bans treatments like puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy for people under the age of 18, forcing trans youth to go through the puberty of their sex assigned at birth and exacerbating gender dysphoria. Puberty blockers are reversible treatments used to delay the permanent effects of puberty so that trans youth, their families, and their doctors can understand their identities better. The legislation allows for the same medications to be used by cisgender youth for other conditions. The bill doesn't ban any treatment for being too generous. It bans a class of people from using them for a specific purpose. So to be clear, if a cis boy wants to take testosterone because they want to reaffirm their gender and take hormone therapy in order to embody who they truly are inside, that's fine. They don't have a problem with the drugs. They don't have a problem with the drugs going to kids. They have a problem with queer kids existing. They are pushing for fucking queer coffins. That's all this is. They prefer our corpses to our existences. There's no way they don't know about things like the Trevor Project or about queer suicide. Their answer is to invest in the children's coffin industry. I do have to give props to this article for not taking people's bullshit. These treatments and procedures have a lifetime of negative consequences that are irreversible, said Representative William Lamberth incorrectly. Yeah, fuck you, William Lamberth. You're actively out here pushing for people's corpses. The bill takes effect this summer and gives trans youth until March 31st, 2024 to end their current medical treatments, the Tennessean reported. Democrats said that medical treatments should be left to trans people and their doctors and should not be legislated. I'll look at that in a second. Definitely. The bill became a priority for state Republicans after anti-transgender extremists and Daily Wire writer Matt Walsh falsely claimed that the Vanderbilt University Medical Center was trying to, quote, castrate, sterilize, and mutilate minors. When you're on the same side as people sending bomb threats to children's hospitals, reevaluate your everything. Bottom surgery is not performed on minors, but that didn't stop 62 Republican state representatives from signing a letter condemning such surgeries on minors. Christ, this is a fucking cartoon state. The moral panic led to a rally, complete with anti-queer hate groups and the white nationalist Proud Boys that 1,500 to 3,000 people attended, called the Rally to End Child Mutilation. Even one of the state's U.S. senators, Marsha Blackburn, attended, and people held signs calling for the death to doctors who provide gender-affirming care, while others said, "Hellfire awaits queer people." Queer organizations denounced the bill. Decisions about trans medical care should be made between trans patients, their doctors, and their families. Politicians have no business deciding these personal matters by enforcing blanket bans that defy professional guidance from every major medical and mental health association in the country, said Trevor Project Advocacy and Government Affairs Vice President Casey Suffredini. I'm sorry if I'm fucking up your name. We urge the governor to reject this harmful bill and instead work to expand access to best practice medical care for young people across Tennessee. HB 9, the drag ban, classifies male and female impersonators as adult cabaret performers and bans, quote, adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors. Now, this is the far more insidious bill, because at least HB 1 is doing what it says. HB 1 is shitting on queer people who want to access healthcare. It's shitty. Fuck them for doing it. They're absolute monsters. It does what they said it would do. This defines anybody who is impersonating a male or female, which inherently means anyone can in bad faith argue every trans person ever. It falls under this bill. It means that your existence is an adult cabaret performance, which means you can't go anywhere kids could be, because it's banned adult-oriented performances as harmful to minors. The bill's sponsor has said that drag shows are, quote, child abuse, and fought against a pride drag show in his district in the past. I continue to hear from Madison Countyans appalled at the possibility of a drag queen show in Conger Park, he wrote on Facebook about a local drag show this past October. I share your shock and sentiment. If Mayor Conger or city officials have approved this event, they are clearly ignoring the law. I intend to see that the law is upheld. Opponents of the bill have said it is so broadly written that pro wrestling and pop stars could be targeted by the law. One Democratic lawmaker pointed out that Tennessee already bans obscenity in public and in front of minors, so actual obscene performances by drag artists are already illegal in public. If being seen in front of children, that is already illegal, correct? If you're wearing lederhosen and being obscene in front of children, you'd be arrested, correct? State Rep Gloria Johnson said. Queer organizations denounced the bill. By passing House Bill 9, the trans legislature has done nothing but spread hate, misinformation, and extremism, the Human Rights Campaign legal director Sarah Warbler said. Rather than focus on actual policy issues facing Tennesseans, politicians would rather spend their time and effort misconstruing age-appropriate performances at a library to pass as many anti-queer bills as they can. Dangerous rhetoric like this has real consequences. Prejudice-inspired bills only rile up an extremist base and normalize violence against the queer community, especially trans and non-binary people. We urge Governor Lee to veto this discrimination. All right, let me look at the thing you sent, rather not. Oh, yeah, I try not to cover stuff that could happen because there's too much wild stuff on both sides. There's a possibility of bills on both sides doing horrible things. There's so fucking many of them that I can't cover every maybe. I'm covering this because these are getting signed. Even if they don't get signed, they're getting passed. The Texas bill I'm covering entirely because I think it's so horrifying seeing that new direction that even though that's not a bill that's going to happen, the fact that they're now so fucking Uh, it's a good thing. It's absolutely a good thing. Um, I try to cover stuff that's more like, because I want to, when I'm doing this format, I more talk from the perspective of like reading articles and then talking about them. Uh, and I should still go into this because this is straight up. It's banning all queer people, all trans folks from just existing. And then on top of that, because that HB9 is not, it defines trans people existing as a performance. And I understand that it's really easy to say, no, we don't mean it to mean that. If the wording on the tin can so easily be misconstrued into something so horrible, I don't want to see what happens when it's manipulated in bad faith. We have a bill from the new article from the New Republic. Mississippi passes cruel bill banning gender-affirming care for trans minors. This is written for the New Republic by Toriata. The bill would block health insurance from covering gender-affirming care and put physicians at risk of having their license revoked. The Mississippi state passed a bill Tuesday banning gender-affirming care for trans minors, the latest in a torrent of anti-trans legislation across the states. The bill is now headed to the desk of Governor Tate Reeves, who is expected to sign the bill, having expressed opposition to trans rights multiple times. If the bill becomes law, it will ban transition-related care for people under 18 and defund any public institutions that provide it. The bill will block health insurance from covering gender-affirming care for minors and Medicaid from reimbursing or covering the procedures. Physicians could have their license revoked for providing such care, and anyone claiming to have experienced harm by the doctors would be allowed to sue them for up to 30 years after the event. Okay. The ability to sue if you get care is going to lead to targeting lawsuits. When it is written into the law plainly you can sue, lawyers just get salivating. Lawsuits aren't determined by who's right. They're determined by who has the most money. This is essentially going to shut down all trans care for anyone who is preventing. At some point, it has to become clear that this isn't about protecting anyone. If it was about protecting people, they would be putting limits on it. They would be saying, we need more research. They would be saying, you have to jump through hoops to get it. They would be saying, well, we want to just protect the non-trans kids. They're just flat out torturing all kids who know they're trans. Saying, fuck you, you get to go through puberty in the wrong direction because I don't believe you. This fucking sucks. The bill would also ban gender confirmation surgeries. But as the Mississippi Free Press noted, House lawmakers admitted while voting on the bill in January that they were not aware of any trans state residents receiving such surgeries. Because it doesn't fucking happen. This is infuriating. They know this shit doesn't happen. They just frame it in a way that they can act like, oh, we're protecting kids. So when they drop the fact that it's just banning kids accessing this care, it's not as much of a hard turn. It is really painful watching these groups line up a gun, point it at somebody, claiming, oh no, there's no bullet in there, I'm doing this the safe way, and then watching people be surprised or at all shocked when they pull the trigger and the target that they've been pointing the gun at is injured and hurt. This is going to be really bad. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is why we need to be getting organized. I think we need to start separating modern medicine from government availability. I think we need to start talking about the options of DIY HRT, gray market. Yeah, DIY. You're 100% right, rather not. We're both getting to the same conclusion here. Because unfortunately, we can't guarantee access. It's too easy for states or hateful assholes to decide, you know what, you don't get your medicine today. And then suddenly, you don't get the medicine you fucking need. Queer rights groups slammed the bill. No children are undergoing surgeries in this state. They are not even options for bottom surgeries for adults in this state. And anyone under 18 who is placed on gender-affirming medication undergoes a thorough and lengthy multidisciplinary evaluation to ever reaching the point of taking medication, during which time parents are always involved, said Stacy Pace, a doctor at Spectrum, the other clinic. The problem lawmakers perceive with trans youth getting procedures done simply doesn't exist. Rob Hill, the state director of Human Rights Campaign in Mississippi, also criticized the Republican lawmakers who passed the bill. Politicians who don't have an ounce of medical training are interfering with our rights as parents and acting as if they know how to raise and support our children better than we do. Attacking queer Mississippians will not solve any problems or make life easier for working folks in this state. The only thing it will accomplish is to further demonize and alienate trans kids. Mississippi's bill is the third measure banning gender-affirming care for minors in this year alone, after Utah and South Dakota. All three bills are part of an absolute deluge of anti-trans legislation across the country. From bills banning coverage of care to forbidding trans girls from would help if I could speak. From banning trans girls from playing in girls' sports. Lawmakers usually argue they are implementing such legislation to protect children, but a study published in January found that trans and non-binary teenagers who receive gender-affirming care have significantly less depression and anxiety and more satisfaction with their lives than before treatment. The study, which is published in the New England Journal of Medicine, found that almost 70% of patients who experienced severe depression saw it drop to moderate or even minimal levels after 2 years of hormone therapy. Participants who had mild depression experienced subclinical levels after treatment, and almost 40% of participants who had clinical anxiety saw it fall to the non-clinical range after treatment. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone. There have been studies, and the reason why people are prescribing these medications is because they work. I don't think it should be all that surprising that people are, they take the medication for a reason. They take it because it works, because it's effective, because it's stuff that it's stuff they could survive with. I think that's honestly, I'm going to sign off for a bit. This has been a bit of a heavy stream, and my computer's already telling me that we're having a bit of a technical issue. So I'm going to turn off and try and figure some stuff out, and we'll be back at 6:30, most likely doing that C stream, trying to undo the psychic damage that we just did. Yeah. The world is rough, y'all. Make sure you're connecting with your local community. Make sure you are training. Make sure you are getting yourself as dangerous as you can be, because there's people in your life who can't. Thank you all for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. That's going to be it from me. Stay dangerous, y'all. Keep each other safe. And remember, moral doesn't mean legal. And Stonewall was a fucking riot. Peace.